You're listening in on an animated discussion about Batman the Animated Series with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic extraordinaire from the Cinematropolis.com. And today's episode is Season 1, Episode 49, I Am the Night. So Joshua, I've actually heard this episode heralded as one of the greats.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Really good. It's one of the greats at giving us kind of the philosophy of Batman. I think that's where it really comes in.
Well, and showing and demonstrating outside of why he's good outside of the crime fighting bit.
Yeah, I mean, that goodness of self, right? Like we see the good actions, yeah, but we see the goodness of self in this episode when he's literally in crisis.
Right. Well, and how he inspires people, I think was my biggest take away from the episode is, yeah, he does all those crime fighting things, but it's the small actions that make the big difference.
Absolutely. I think the reason I zero in on the moment of crisis is because of the title card, which again is very good. Not great, but very good.
I like the title card quite a bit. It's eerie.
It's dark.
A unconscious or dead body laying in the dark.
A pool of blood.
Yeah.
On children's television. I mean, we haven't done a who was this show made for in a minute, but this is a moment
to
ask.
Let's do that. This is a good throwback. Who was this made for?
Who was this made for?
What kid was like, I can't wait to watch Batman the Animated Series, and and the parent walks by and they're like, whoa.
Yeah, right?
What is my kid watching right now?
Two surprising things, though, about this title card, because far too often we have seen bodies in pools of blood. It's just usually two of them, and they're the Waynes.
Yes.
But looking at this, you can immediately go, that's not the Waynes. It's a single person. Who will it be? And this episode takes a minute to answer that question.
Yes.
And it gets there in sort of so roundabout a manner, I almost forget about the title card by the time we realize who it is that's on the ground in a pool of blood. It's very impressive storytelling.
Commissioner Gordon, down for the count.
Which is why I zeroed in on that moment of crisis, because there's already a point where Batman's wondering if he's doing enough good, if it's really worth it, this life that he leads. But it's not until Gordon is on the ground that he's like, nope, it's not worth it.
Exactly.
If I couldn't be there to save this man, it's not worth it. Gordon is the crisis crux right here for Batman.
Well, I think it ties into a lot of the philosophical ideas about Batman that work, really, because Gordon is kind of the heart of the city. Gordon is going into the Chris Nolan parallels here without getting too in the weeds, but like Gordon's the guy who can legitimately do what Batman's doing.
He's the daytime Batman.
Yes.
Now, Gotham can't survive without Batman, but it also could not survive without Gordon. He does the job during the day. I mean, we will see an episode in the future where Batman specifically says, I'm just the night shift, you do this day in, day out. Like, he gives the props to Gordon. The thing doesn't happen without you either. And they're a little on the nose with the comparison in this episode by saying that Thomas Wayne would be the exact same age as Gordon if he hadn't died. That's a little much.
On the nose, yeah.
But there is an element of that all the time, that Gordon is I don't really feel like father figure, but is very much a mentor figure or a connection to an older person who isn't his dad, right?
It's sort
like
of
Alfred comes
a little
in
bit
as
of a mentor.
It's kind of a mentor, yeah. An exemplar. If you can get a very specific father figure, he's like the crime-fighting father figure, right? Because he does the hard work during the day with the paperwork and the red tape and the police and the mayor, etc.
Which is really interesting. And of course, it kind of talks to, I would argue, the poetry or the poetic nature of the piece, which is at the end of the episode, Gordon says, man, I wish I would have done what you were doing when I was younger. I always wanted to be a hero like you.
A hero like you. Yeah.
Wow.
Because, we've kind of seen in the actions more than his words that that's how Bruce Wayne feels about Gordon. If I wasn't good enough to save this hero, what good am I? And then for Gordon to at the end say, I always wanted to be a hero like you. And Batman says with all sincerity, you are. It's good. That is good.
And I think it's A+ storytelling. I really like that this episode interrogates itself. It interrogates Batman and like, hey, what good are you actually doing in the city? And after doing this for for years and years and years, I'm sure this would wear on Bruce Wayne. He is still a human, and I'm sure there's that he's holding the paper and he sees that the Penguin gets off. And it's like, what good am I really doing here? And I think that is a philosophical question that's been asked about Batman forever.
No, I like that he asks it, and I like that we put it to bed by the end of this episode on multiple levels.
Yes.
Like on various levels we put it to bed. And honestly, there's one way that we don't put it to bed as much as I would like, but I'll talk about it at the end. It's just a small thing that I wonder about. Well, we'll get to it, because let's talk about the great stuff.
Well, the great stuff. You have the character, for example, that we see at the beginning, Wizard, who is voiced by Seth Green, by the way, who is the kid who is pickpocketing, or sorry, I guess swindling or conning some people out of some change, who Batman catches in the act, takes to Dr. Leslie Tompkins, who makes him work in a shelter, and then he gets away. And at the end of the episode, we see that he's like, I've been put in those types of homes all throughout my life, but for some reason, when you told me and put me there, it meant something different. So now I think I'm going to go back home.
And Wizard had been so cynical at Batman in the moment that Batman saved his life. Look, I didn't need your help. I don't need some guy in a fright mask to show up and sort me out. I don't need this home. Welcome back, Leslie Tompkins.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back indeed. It's funny before we started this podcast and I think about this series, I always forget about that character, but she's in a lot of episodes and is referenced a lot throughout the entire DC
She's
animated
a big
universe.
Emotional touch point. She is a very big, and I mean, came that way from the comic books, but I mean, like everything about Batman since the 90s, this is where a lot of that stuff got solidified. She existed in the comics. She was there and she did that job, but BTAS becoming the touchstone for Batman for so many of us is where we start thinking, no, man, Leslie Tompkins is really important. And I thought it was kind of subtextual, but to see that really she's the reason that Wizard pulls this stuff together.
Yes.
I mean, Batman's example of saving him and helping him despite his cynical outlook on it is part of it. That set him up for Leslie to speak to him. But we know it was Leslie day in, day out at the shelter that then put Wizard over the edge to where he was like, I'm going to go ahead and pull myself out of this life.
Well, again, it's like Batman serves as a catalyst. This moment with Batman, this interaction is a catalyst, but Leslie Tompkins is really the one on the day in, day out who is helping this kid out, right?
But it helps us see what she probably did for Bruce. I mean, why he didn't fall down into a giant pit of despair before he could be Batman. Before Batman was the way he dealt with that pain, we see Alfred and Leslie were the ways that he dealt with that pain. And they're still doing it. Leslie's still doing it. And I love that stuff.
And by the way, mentioning Dr. Leslie Tompkins, this episode really did feel like a spiritual successor to An Appointment in Crime Alley.
Yeah, definitely.
Because this is another, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't that episode set during an anniversary as well?
Yes.
So this is the next anniversary, I assume.
Yeah, that's why Leslie was waiting on him. She expected to see him. So here we are a year later, more or less, in fiction. And
technically it's the next season, I guess.
Sure.
Maybe.
But I mean, that's why he's there with the roses and all that. Yeah, it's great.
Well, it's the imagery of the anger on his face whenever that guy steps on
Crushes
the
roses.
Yeah.
And that can also tell from that Batman's kind of in an emotionally difficult space, because that's not the kind of thing that would get anger from him. Like the guy's already tried to murder this kid right in front of him. He should be mad already, but it's the dishonoring of his parents' memories that puts him over when he's wondering if he has even been honoring his parents' memories. There's another subtle bit here. We get Wizard, who is very textually in a different place because of Batman. We get Bullock showing his real heart when it comes to, I will blame you for Gordon going down. I will give you no credit, but all of the blame is strong.
He really hates Batman.
He really hates Batman.
Yeah, no, it's all there. And it's one of those times, it's really interesting to get a snapshot of where Batman's at in this episode, because it just, everything falls apart. It all plays into his negative emotions that he's feeling. Right?
Yeah, he's going to hear Bullock. He's hearing Bullock instead of hearing Dick and Alfred, who are saying, no, you make a huge difference. Every life you save is a huge difference. I mean, listen to the language that Bruce used at the beginning. I've put out a few fires.
Yeah.
Every life you save is a life you saved. One would have made your life worthwhile, let alone the dozens or hundreds. But no, what he hears is Bullock. I hold you responsible.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I love that quote. I've put out a few fires, but the war just goes on and on, Alfred. Wow, man, it's so defeatist.
It is.
It is so defeatist and borderline nihilism. It's rough.
Yeah. And And it allows him to make a point of something that was much subtler, but I picked up on. See what you think of it. Batman complains at one point that he's merchandised. They put me on shirts.
Oh, yes.
I'm a joke. When we see that on screen, though, did you notice what we saw? Now, we saw some stuff in the window, but what did we really see?
It was a kid. It was a
little
kid who was very excited to be
in a Batman outfit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they merchandise you absolutely to make money, but notice, incidentally, you are inspiring a whole other generation.
You're becoming the symbol. You know,
Yeah.
to get into that a little bit of that Batman as a symbol, as an idea that
Yes.
inspires people.
Yes.
You know, I think it's really powerful. And I think that this episode does a great job at visualizing that as well. Of course, yes, dark sides of evil big companies cashing in on heroics.
There's a cynical kernel, 100%. But when we are shown this thing on screen, it's a child who is in costume and excited.
She might grow up to be Batgirl again, the next Batgirl. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing.
Funny you mentioned that. Look at who's on screen being inspired by Batman. Barbara Gordon, who has nice things to say about Batman as a concept, and then also has it right in front of her, saves her father's life. We see where that's headed. That's another trajectory. To come back to your Batman as symbol, a thing that I make much more for the comic book version of Batman than this one, but Bruce Wayne is not unique, except in the fact that he makes other Batmen.
Yes.
I mean, that's a big deal. And some of that's on purpose. He trains Robins. But some of it's incidental. This kid wearing the costume. Barbara will eventually be Batgirl. It's powerful business.
Well, and the fact that he takes in children who had similar tragedies in their childhood as him, I think is worth noting as well.
But it's also stuff that I can really understand on a human level, kind of losing the forest for the trees every now and then.
I mean, yeah, hey, how many of us have never had bad weeks where you're doing a job that you think you know is important, but at the same time, when it becomes monotonous, you kind of lose
a couple of things go against you, and it's right here. You're looking right here at all the downsides and losing all of the upsides.
Well, and of course, whenever you get in that mindset, every negative thing you hear, you're not going to hear the positive stuff. It's all the negative stuff that you're going to hear.
All you can see are the coffee mugs, not the kid whose life is being inspired by you.
Exactly. Which, again, I think really is nice to tap into the human side of the character of Batman, because it makes us understand this is a real guy with real problems. He is not, even though he does crazy and because he's Batman stuff, but really at the end of the day, he's just a guy. And I think that helps set him apart from other characters we meet later in the DCAU.
Yeah, definitely.
Who don't have those kinds of existential questions.
Yeah. I mean, they're doing whatever they do. Wonder Woman has a bigger purpose. Green Lantern has a bigger purpose. Superman knows exactly what he's doing, but it's a little easier for Batman to lose sight of that bigger inspirational picture. So I love how this episode brings that up and shows us that very human side of Batman, but also, again, like puts it right to bed on every level, except for my one niggling point. Are you ready for my one niggling level?
Throw it at me.
Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson does not get abused in this episode, but he very much gets not listened to, which is not a complaint. That's on point for what's going on with Bruce Wayne. We just said it. He's only going to hear the negative. He's not going to hear the positive from Alfred or from Dick Grayson. We come back to Gordon. We come back to Whizzer. Through that kid, come back to the merchandising. Through Barbara, we come back to some of that. But we never... I just really wish that we got a moment between Bruce and Dick where Bruce thanked him, or even if it was in that hospital room and just a like thumbs up or a wink, something. Because that had to be very difficult for Dick to see his father in that place.
Well, Joshua, I mean, I hadn't considered that, because I actually liked the way it played out. But... I like that idea.
Like everything that happens.
Robbins that is who pushes him back, back over through the other side. But I will say
he is. That's true. I mean, that's
and Bruce Wayne doesn't
says no one's going to stop him except for Batman. No one's going to save Gordon except for Batman. It's because we come back to everybody else, and that I have a soft spot for Robin, that I was like, wouldn't it be nice to hear a nice word from your dad in that moment?
That's what I'm saying, though. And this actually plays very well in with the overarching narrative about where these two characters are heading and those disagreements, which is Batman not acknowledging Dick Grayson when he needs to be. I mean, I know it's not a great thing to hear, but it's an oversight from Bruce Wayne and Batman. And I think that's something that we've seen in the little moments. It's the little stuff like this, like not saying, oh, thanks, Robin, or even the thumbs up, or like, man, I couldn't have done it without you. It's more like Batman doing his thing, because all it is Robin says, fine, if you're not going to do it, I will. And that's when a light bulb goes off over his head. He says, actually, you're right. I'm going to do this. But he doesn't say, I'm right, thank you. He just says, I'm right, and then goes off.
Right. And that's really the moment where it probably would have been fine for me, is if he had said, no, this is our hunt. Take him with you. That's it. You know, again, I love Batman and Robin together as a pair. Dick Grayson deserves better.
No, I agree. He does deserve better.
Just do it so well for everybody else in this episode that I'm kind of like, but what about Robin?
Yeah, I Joshua, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I'm just saying I think it's a character flaw of Batman's that is recurring. We've seen before.
A character flaw of this version of Batman.
Of this version, yes. This version of Batman. Yes, absolutely.
No, that's legit.
So I kind of think it's a cool little detail because it fits in with the version they're painting, and we know where these characters' paths are going to separate because of stuff like this.
Yeah, that's coming.
Yeah,
it's coming down the pipe.
I think it's cool storytelling. It's like very subtle
if they
storytelling.
Did it on purpose. Yes.
That's the question.
Not really sure they did at this point.
It's a great question.
I don't think it's a mistake to not do it. It's just a thing that would have made me happy.
Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree. If Batman was a better person. JK, low blow, loco.
That's it. Show's over.
If this version of Batman was a little more attentive to Robin, I think, yes.
Yeah.
Well deserved.
Yeah.
Well, Joshua, I've got a recommendation here. And, I admittedly, I had a hard time finding one.
This is a tough one.
It's tough because, but you know what kept coming back to me? I was thinking a man who struggles with his mission, or a person who struggles with their mission, I should say, but ultimately overcomes it. And that is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2.
100%.
Because it's
100% agree.
A person who has been doing the thing that they do for a while, so much so that they're like, how much of a difference am I actually making? I'm sacrificing all these things for my personal life to do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really worth it?
Is it worth it? Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of similarities between that.
Definitely. And they do a really great job in that movie of showing how he has affected New York.
Oh, yeah.
To the point where that has become a thing for other versions of Spider-Man, when I'm like, just let that be that thing. Let Spider-Man 2 be the one that does that, because it's very good.
It's great. It's probably my favorite Spider-Man movie.
It's me too.
It's excellent. It's tough. I mean, like Homecoming, it makes a really solid run at convincing me otherwise, but Spider-Man 2 just holds a special place in my heart.
It's really good. And I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of co-sign it, because I also had a really hard time coming up with alternative recommendations. You would think that I would just have a Rolodex of people who had trouble with their calling and then returned to it eventually. And I just don't. It's not coming to me. But I will say, as an addendum to Spider-Man 2, is that is a theme that crops up a lot in the Spider-Man comic books. So there are various and sundry runs, like just look for the famous issue cover of Spider-Man's costume in a trash can. They even used it in Spider-Man 2. And Peter Parker walking away from it, Spider-Man no more. So rather than belabor, I will just co-sign Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man et al.
Okay, I can't put another one. Martin Scorsese's recent film, Silence. It's a great film. Basically, no one saw it because the studio dumped it at Christmas season in like 4 theaters, and then it rolled out everywhere else.
I have not seen it.
Oh, it's incredible. It's about a missionary played by Andrew Garfield. Well, 2 missionaries, I should say, played by Andrew Garfield and Adam Driver. They're going to Japan back when it's still feudal Japan as missionaries, trying to find their priest mentor who has gone missing. And, of course, trying to minister to the people of Japan.
I should say I didn't see it. I have read the book.
Oh, yes.
And now I'm very annoyed at myself that I didn't think of that one, because that is really fantastic. That is speaking from the book, I cannot speak to the film, but a man who constantly struggles with his mission while also never abandoning it.
Exactly.
To the point where, no, I don't think this is a spoiler to say, to the point where the version of himself that starts the book would feel like the version of him towards the end of the book had abandoned his mission.
Yes.
But he hasn't.
He
just adapted.
I freaking love that movie.
It's
the story, the book.
No, I need to see that movie. The book is fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. Well, it delves in, coming from my more religious upbringing, it's a film that really resonates to where I've the journey I've taken myself. And so I'm like, this is just a man struggling with his mission. and understanding how your mission evolves throughout the years. And
How it has to.
Has
Yeah.
to. And it might look different at the, in the later years than it does in the earlier years, just like with Batman.
Yeah, I'll say that circles around to Batman because the best versions of him show exactly that. Robin is an evolution. Going global is an evolution.
Joining the Justice League.
Joining the Justice League is an evolution of what a young Bruce Wayne set out to do. So, yeah, great stuff. Silence the novel, I'll say, and silence the movie, Caleb says.
Check it out.
Well, that about wraps up this animated discussion. Caleb, where can people go to continue the conversation with you?
Well, Joshua, you can always find me on Twitter talking about film, television, video games, and all sorts of other pop culture goodness at C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk. I'm also the editor-in-chief and film critic at the Cinematropolis, and we publish these in-depth essays on all types of different films, oftentimes including science fiction and superhero films, all the stuff you'd want to read about. And you can find all these articles at thecinematropolis.com. Joshua, what about you?
I'm also most active on Twitter, where you can find me easily enough at Joshua Unruh. And remember that an animated discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions.
Well, in our next episode, Batman will be killed, or will he? We talk about Season 1, Episode 51, The Man Who Killed Batman.
Until next time, we'll see you back here. Same bat time, same bat channel.